It's August 2014 beneath the eastern edge of Gaza. An Israeli combat engineer drops through a poured concrete shaft. On a web harness, sidearm up, headlamp on. He counts the rungs as he descends. This is the Gaza Metro. This is how it was built. The first tunnels under Gaza were not military. They were commercial. In the late 1980s, families living along the Philadelphia corridor, the 14-kilometer strip of border between southern Gaza and Egyptian Sinai, began burrowing under their own houses. A shaft in a basement, a hand-dug passage running south, another shaft surfacing in a cousin's basement in Egyptian Rafah. The cargo was cigarettes, livestock, fuel, prescription medicine, satellite dishes, sometimes brides. The trade grew slowly. After Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005 and Hamas took power in 2007, the land border was sealed. The tunnels became the economy. By 2010, there were over 1,000 smuggling tunnels under the Philadelphia corridor. Some were wide enough to drive a small car through. Owners paid the Hamas government a per-ton tax on everything that came up. In 2013, Egypt destroyed most of them by pumping seawater into the strip, drowning the network in salt. The smuggling tunnels never fully recovered, but by then the model had been studied and copied and refined. The new builders had seen what salt water could do. They began lining the upper sections with waterproof membrane and installing one-way drainage pumps in the deepest galleries. The lessons of the Egyptian flooding became part of the engineering manual. The new tunnels were not for cigarettes. The first proof of what they could do came earlier. In June 2006, Hamas fighters crawled through a 650-meter cross-border tunnel from Gaza into southern Israel. They attacked a tank position at Kerem Shalom, killed 2 soldiers, and captured a 19-year-old conscript named Gilad Shalit. He was held in the tunnel network for 5 years. He was traded back for 1,027 Palestinian prisoners in 2011. One of those prisoners was a Hamas operative named Yahya Sinwar. Sinwar returned to Gaza obsessed with 2 things. The first was rebuilding the network on a scale nobody had attempted. The second was using it to take more hostages. Within a few years, he was running the Hamas internal security apparatus. By 2017, he was the head of Hamas in Gaza. After the prisoner trade, the building accelerated. A Hamas military tunnel is not a hole in the ground. It is poured infrastructure. The shaft starts inside a civilian building, a kitchen, a children's bedroom, a mosque storeroom, a UNRWA classroom. A trapdoor leads to a vertical shaft, usually 20 to 30 meters deep. The walls are lined with prefabricated concrete arches, stacked like vertebrae. Reinforcing steel runs through each segment. Electrical conduits carry power. Ventilation pipes carry air. Some galleries run fiber optic cable for hardwired communications that Israeli signals intelligence cannot intercept from above. The shaft entrance is the most vulnerable part of the system and the most engineered. The trapdoor is usually under a kitchen tile, a bedroom rug, a refrigerator on rollers, a sink cabinet, or a slab of concrete made to look like an unfinished floor. Some entrances open from above only. Some open from below only. A fighter coming back from a mission knocks in code, and a different fighter on the deep side releases the bolt. Some entrances are double-blind, 2 separate trapdoors separated by a meter of empty rubble, so that an above-ground discovery of the first door reveals nothing but rubble. The horizontal galleries are about 1 meter wide and 1.8 to 2 meters tall. You walk single file. The floor is smooth, poured concrete. Every few hundred meters there is a junction. At a junction, there might be a storeroom, a bunk room, a command room with a desk and a chair and a hard-wired phone, a weapons cache, a surgical room with an operating table, an anesthesia machine, and a rack of IV bags. There are 3 rough tiers. The shallow tier between 3 and 10 meters down, is for short-range tactical movement. Fighters disappear from one rooftop and emerge 2 streets away. The middle tier, around 20 meters, is for storage, sleeping quarters, and lateral movement under entire neighborhoods. The middle tier also holds the rocket assembly lines. The galleries widen to about 2.5 meters there. Lathes and milling machines, smuggled in piece by piece, sit bolted to the floor. The propellant, a sugar and potassium nitrate mixture in the early years, more sophisticated formulations later, is mixed in dedicated rooms with forced ventilation. A finished Qassam is wheeled on a cart back through the gallery, up a launch shaft, and fired from a buried tube within seconds of the trapdoor opening. The deep tier, between 40 and 70 meters down, is the strategic layer. This is where the senior commanders lived, where the hostages were held, where the command and control bunkers sit. The deep tier is below the reach of most standard aerial munitions. The estimated total length of the network, as of late 2023, was between 500 and 700 kilometers. The Gaza Strip itself is only 41 kilometers long. The metro has more track than the London Underground. Building it was expensive. Israeli and American intelligence estimate that Hamas spent over $1 billion on tunnel construction between 2007 and 2023. A single cross-border attack tunnel could cost $3 million to dig. The concrete came in through the Philadelphia smuggling tunnels at first, then through legitimate humanitarian imports rerouted into the military supply chain. The fuel came from the same channels. The reinforcing steel was milled from imported rebar meant for civilian reconstruction. The labor was local. Hamas paid tunnel diggers about $200 to $300 a month. Many were teenagers. At least 160 child workers are confirmed to have died in tunnel collapses between 2008 and 2014. The collapses were not reported as combat casualties. They were not reported at all. In the summer of 2014, the system was used at scale for the first time. During the 50-day war between Israel and Hamas, fighters emerged from cross-border attack tunnels inside Israeli territory near Kibbutz Sufa and Kibbutz Ein Hashlosha. The tunnels were a complete surprise to the Israeli military. Some had been dug under the border for over 2 years. Israel destroyed 32 of them during the war. Hamas began digging more before the ceasefire was signed. On October 7, 2023, the tunnels were used at a scale nobody outside the network had imagined. Fighters emerged through dozens of pre-positioned tunnel mouths along the border fence and inside Gaza side compounds. Hostages, 251 of them, were marched back through the same shafts. They were held in cells carved into the deep tier. The cells had no natural light. The ventilation ran on diesel generators. The water came through plastic pipes spliced into civilian utility lines above. One of the freed hostages later described her cell as 2 meters by 2 meters, hewn out of soft rock and lined with rough concrete. There was a thin mattress, a plastic bucket, and a single bare light bulb wired into the ventilation conduit. She was held there for 51 days. The guards rotated every 12 hours. They wore green tactical vests and never spoke to her by name. Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas in Gaza and the architect of October 7th, lived in this network for more than a year after the attack. Israeli intelligence eventually mapped a personal bunker complex underneath the Khan Yunis hospital district. It included a multi-room living suite, a tiled bathroom, a steel blast door, and an emergency exit shaft. He moved every few days. He was killed above ground in October 2024 in a half-collapsed building, not a tunnel, by a foot patrol that did not know who he was. In November 2023, the Israeli army released drone footage of a multi-room tunnel complex underneath the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City. Concrete corridors, power outlets, a blast door. Hamas denied that the complex existed. The IDF said the complex was a command bunker. Independent reporters who entered the site afterward saw the corridors but could not verify the function. Fighting the tunnels has become its own kind of war. The Israeli army built a dedicated unit called Yahalom, the Hebrew word for diamond, for tunnel demolition and underground combat. Yahalom soldiers descend in pairs with night vision, suppressed weapons, oxygen monitors, and trained Belgian Malinois dogs on lead. They map each gallery by hand. They mark hostage signs, they place explosive charges at structural choke points, and collapse the gallery from inside. When a tunnel is too long to clear by hand, Israeli engineers use what they call the sponge bomb, a two-part liquid that expands into a hard polymer plug, sealing a shaft from above. When even that is not enough, they flood entire sections with Mediterranean seawater pumped from purpose-built stations near the coast. The salt water corrodes the concrete and the steel. It also destroys whatever groundwater the strip has left. Robots are sent in first. Most do not come back. The radio signals do not penetrate the depth. The robots are cheap, treaded, expendable. Yahya's younger brother Mohammed, a tunnel commander in his own right, took over the network's day-to-day operations after the war began. Mohammed had been digging professionally since the late 1990s. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike on a tunnel complex under the European hospital in Khan Yunis in May 2025. Despite all of this, the network is not gone. As of mid-2026, Israeli military officials assess that between 50 and 75% of the deep tier in central and southern Gaza is still intact. New shafts have been dug since the start of the war, sometimes within meters of recently destroyed ones. The concrete continues to arrive, mixed in with reconstruction shipments. The diggers continue to be paid. There are sections of the network that Israeli forces have never entered. There are sections that have been entered, mapped, and then quietly reoccupied. There is at least one rumored gallery somewhere south of Rafah that crosses under the Israeli border in a direction nobody has yet been able to confirm. What is down there now exactly? Nobody on the outside knows. The shaft the Israeli engineer descended in 2014 was sealed, then resealed 3 more times. It was dug out again in 2017. It was dug out again in 2022. It was used on October 7th. It is being dug out again.